Dr. Murray, you are charged in count 1 of this felony.
He's unconscious. He's not breathing. Yes, he's not breathing, sir.
You did unlawfully and without malice kill Michael Joseph Jackson, a human being.
Did anybody witness what happened? No, just the doctor, sir. The doctor's been the only one here.
In an unlawful manner.
I told the truth. It's all BS. Dr. Murray's a fall guy.
This offense is called involuntary manslaughter.
He's pumping his chest, but he's not responding to anything.
The maximum penalty for this offense is 4 years in state prison.
Daddy has been the best father you could ever imagine.
I am an innocent man. I therefore plead not guilty.
The countdown is on. Closing arguments in the trial of Dr. Conrad Murray coming up noon Eastern. We've got all the action outside the courtroom as we expect many members of the Jackson family to arrive at any moment now. I'm Vinnie Politan. This is HLN Special Report. We're less than an hour away to one of the biggest days in the Conrad Murray trial. Closing arguments set to begin noon Eastern. For 22 days, we watched this trial unfold. The prosecution tried to portray Murray as a doctor who was too distracted juggling several women to properly care for his one and only patient, Michael Jackson. Then, on June 25th, 2009, Murray gave Jackson propofol, walked out of the room, but was too busy talking on his phone, texting on his phone, to realize that the king of pop stopped breathing until it was too late. Then lied to paramedics and doctors about the drugs he'd given Jackson. Then, on the other hand, the defense tried to establish Murray as a caring, compassionate, and competent doctor who was attentive to all of his patients. And they say Jackson, Michael Jackson, was the one who gave himself the fatal dose of propofol and lorazepam that killed him. Dr. Conrad Murray decided not to take the stand in his own defense, so the jury will have to decide whether he's guilty or not guilty based on the evidence presented in court, including that interview that Conrad Murray gave to police. Joining us from outside the courthouse is Ted Rowland, CNN correspondent. Ted, this is it. I mean, closing arguments, any trial I've ever covered, the intensity is palpable. It builds up. This is it. What's it like outside the courthouse today?
Well, you could obviously feel the energy of the Jackson family. Some of them just arrived a few minutes ago. Flanagan just walked in, and it's a different vibe because this is it. You know, a lot of times people say, well, jurors make up their minds in the opening. Well, you can change a juror's mind easily, and somebody who's on the fence, who's not quite sure, can be swayed in the close. There's a lot of pressure on both of these attorneys. I would say a little bit more pressure on Ed Chernoff.
A.J. Hammer, host of Showbiz Tonight here on HLN every night at 11, joins us. A.J., let's talk about the family of Michael Jackson, who we expect in court, who will be there, who won't be there, and all the issues going on there.
Well, of course, Katherine Jackson was expected to not be there. She was going to be going to David Guest's big movie premiere over in London, a documentary about Michael Jackson, something that really was going to be sort of a tribute to Michael Jackson. She had said she had committed to being there, but as she realized that she could not be present in court for the closing arguments. So Katherine Jackson on hand today. In fact, we understand that the family has arrived. There's Katherine right there. And amid chance of justice for Michael, we'll, of course, have Joe Jackson there. He has arrived as well. Janet Jackson, though, surprising to so many people, not going to be there. If you remember, late last month, she actually canceled some concert dates after conferring with her family because she really wanted to be on hand during the defense making their case. But the date that she scheduled to go back to Australia for her rescheduled concert was today. She had the feeling that the case would have been done by now and closing arguments would already have happened. So that's not going to happen. Jermaine's been recovering from oral surgery, so he's going to be at home watching closely. He's not able to be there. But it is going to be pretty tough for the family, I think, to listen to the closing arguments from the defense side. They're going to have to relive some of the things that were dredged up in the course of the case. But once again, they're going to be there front and center, showing that united front, which I think we've talked about quite a bit, is very important for the jury. jury who will be paying very close attention to the family.
Absolutely, A.J. Mike Brooks, HLN law enforcement analyst, joins us as well. Mike, you talk about these closing arguments, how important they are in this case. And what I see is two different types of closing arguments. The prosecution painting the big picture that we've been talking about, how insane it was to be even giving propofol at someone's house in their bedroom without any of the proper equipment. Whereas I can see the defense, you know, doing a laser focus on, okay, well, who actually administered it? Do we know beyond a reasonable doubt?
But you know, when it comes right down to it, Vinny, if he gave it to himself, well, who was there? Who was there with him, or who was supposed to be there monitoring him? And I bet you we're going to see, Vinny, again, in closings by the prosecution, those pictures, the picture of Michael's bedroom with the IV stand, and a picture of that trauma center with all that monitoring equipment that was nowhere to be found inside of Michael Jackson's bedroom. I thought that was powerful in the opening, and I guarantee you they'll probably show it again in the closing just to bring that back up to the jury.
The Honorable Alex Ferrer, host of the syndicated Judge Alex Show, is with us. Judge, you've seen so many trials, presided over so many closing arguments. How important are they? I mean, I got to presume you've spoken to many, many jurors after the trials. How important are closing arguments?
Closing argument, Vinny, you know, being a former prosecutor, closing arguments are critical. That's where you piece everything together, and that's where we're going to hear all the things the jurors forgot: the 4 gallons of propofol, the not having the time to call 911 because your patient is in cardiac arrest and respiratory arrest, but having the time to call his manager. All of those little details that we have forgotten, even though we've talked about them, are going to be put together, and this prosecutor is very, very good. So he's going to have a powerful closing, and I think that's going to seal the deal for Dr. Murray's fate.
Jane Valez Mitchell, host of Issues every night, 7 o'clock, right here on HLN, joins us from outside the courthouse. Jane, set the scene for us.
Well, Vinny, this is it. And that was the name of Michael Jackson's concert that he was going to perform, and that is a very good description of what is happening today here at the Criminal Courts Building in downtown Los Angeles. This is it. This is the big day that everyone is waiting for, and you can see the people behind me, Michael Jackson fans here in huge numbers today. The most people who have ever tried to get inside the courtroom, even more than those who arrived for opening statements, are here today. And those people already inside, those members of the public, you see what it says there. The glove fits, so don't acquit. And you have a lot of other sentiment that if you back up for a second, we're here with Linda J., who is a longtime trial observer, and she is a self-acknowledged trial junkie. You are here. What is the anticipation you're feeling right now?
I'm feeling like Comrade Murray is going down. I like Walgreen yesterday. He got that witness, and he tore him apart.
Well, let me read what is on your sign here. It says, Michael Jackson, we were there in 2005, a reference to the child molestation trial where he was acquitted on all counts. And we are here in 2011. We are with you always until eternity. What inspired you to put together this sign?
I just feel like, I want the world to know that a lot of people are for Michael. We were there for him the whole time, and we're here for him in life, and we're here for him in death. And he's not here to speak for himself, and that's why we're here.
And Linda, you and I were there as Catherine Jackson walked in this morning, and she stopped to talk to me. I said, are you nervous? What would you say? And she says she is very confident that the prosecution is going to do an excellent job. So Catherine Jackson walked in, LaToya walked in. We're still waiting for some more arrivals, but a tremendous sense of energy and anticipation here outside court, Vinny.
We love you, Catherine.
Jane Valez Mitchell, live outside the courthouse. The countdown continues, folks. We're less than an hour away from closing arguments. To stay on top of every detail of this case, and this is the moment, folks, check in throughout the day today. HLNTV.com/Michael Jackson. It's our online home for all up-to-the-minute, comprehensive coverage of the trial. All reporters, analysts, producers teaming up to give you everything from what's happening inside the courtroom to what you're saying outside. Go to HLNTV.com/Michael Jackson. You are watching HLN Special Report, the countdown to closing arguments.
At this time,
Mr. Chernoff, does the defense have any additional witnesses it wishes to call?
We don't. Subject to receipt of exhibits, we will rest.
Thank you. The defense is resting its case.
I wanted him to talk. I really did. I wanted him to testify.
Welcome back to HLN Special Report. The countdown to closing arguments continues. Less than 50 minutes away from those closing arguments. Just moments ago, Gene Casares from our sister network In Session on True TV spoke with Joe Jackson. Let's take a listen.
Latoya, what words for the prosecution today?
Latoya, I'm so sorry for your loss. Michael was an angel. Michael was an angel.
All right, obviously that's not Joe Jackson. That was Latoya Jackson coming in and not saying much today. You got to imagine what is the family going through as they get ready for this moment. It's always difficult for any victim's family. Closing arguments and then the uncertainty of the verdict, which is just around the corner. Joining us from inside the courthouse, CNN producer Alan Duke. Outside, Ted Rowland, CNN correspondent. Alan, let me begin with you. How would you gauge the atmosphere, the anticipation for what's going to happen inside that courtroom today?
You know, it's been building over the last several days of court. You know, 2 days ago on the last day, we had fans acting out in the hallway on the 9th floor. One of them yelling, "Murderer, murderer." When Conrad Murray passed by, they were applauding the prosecutors and the family outside. The frenzy is, well, you just saw it. Everybody knows that it is coming down to the end, and we will know fairly soon if Conrad Murray will be convicted in the death of Michael Jackson. And this is something people have waited for a long time. And you can certainly feel it here. Everybody is wondering, though, how long would jury deliberations take? Will closing arguments be sort of the climax, and then we get stuck waiting for a week for the verdict? So, but right now we're at a fever pitch here at the courthouse.
Yeah, so one thing about deliberations, it can be hours, it can be days, it can be weeks. Ted Rowland, outside the courthouse. Ted, let's talk about those closing arguments. Has the judge set any parameters for these attorneys? You know, some judges say, listen, you better be done in an hour. I'll give you an hour and a half. What are the rules inside the courtroom today?
No time limit for either side on the close. Of course, you'd go too long at your own peril. So I suspect you'll have about a couple hours from Walgren, a couple hours from Chernoff, and then Walgren, of course, gets the last word. He'll be able to address the jury one more time before they get the case. The judge is also apparently going to read the jury instructions before the closing arguments rather than after. So that really puts Walgren in a good position, because literally he'll have the last word before they go in and start their deliberation. Great point, Ted. Let's go to A.J. Hammer, host of Showbiz tonight here on HLN. A.J., the uncertainty of a verdict for victims' families is always difficult. What does it mean for the Jackson family if, in fact, this jury gets the case and comes back with a guilty verdict? Is that vindication for this family?
I don't think so, Vinnie. They've been very vocal from the very beginning that they feel the district attorney undercharged Dr. Conrad Murray with involuntary manslaughter. Many of them have been very vocal about the fact that it should have been second-degree murder. So, no, I don't think they'll be satisfied. However, they do want to see a conviction. And as far as this case is concerned, yes, they'll be much more satisfied, obviously, with a guilty verdict over a not guilty verdict. But as far as him getting convicted of involuntary manslaughter, they're also going to be very upset, and you know they're going to be very vocal if he is sentenced to the 4 years in prison and ends up, as most are predicting, doing little, if no, prison time because of the overcrowding situation there in California. So I don't think it will necessarily bring peace overall and closure to the family. Everybody thinks these cases do bring closure, but many experts say, you know what, they really don't. And in this case in particular, feeling that he's been undercharged, feeling that there's a lot more to this story, even a guilty verdict is not going to put an end to this for the family.
Jane Valez Mitchell outside the courthouse. Jane, you've been out there with the people throughout this case. How do you think the reaction will be outside the courthouse for a guilty versus a not guilty verdict?
Well, the fans that I'm speaking to here, like Abby, who works at UCLA in Los Angeles and decided to come here because she's a Michael Jackson fan, she's very convinced that he will be found guilty. Tell me why.
I think Murray didn't take the stand. The prosecution has done a great job. There's no defense whatsoever. All the evidence points to him being guilty. I mean, he didn't do anything with proper medical procedures.
Now, that is a very common sentiment here. By the way, 61 people tried to get into court today. That's the most of any day since this trial began. And of course, 8 members of the public are allowed in, and then a few overflow are chosen as well. So you have a large overflow out here. And there's also a glove theme. Michael Jackson, of course, famous for wearing a glove. You did Photoshop and put one of the sequence gloves on Dr. Murray. And then we have a lady here who is originally from New Jersey via Bermuda who has a glove. And I understand that you are such a fan that when you had a radio show, you played so much Michael Jackson music that your bosses complained.
They let me go. I played Michael Jackson. I always said, you know who's in the house? That's me when Michael Jackson's on the air. You can't play music. You can't talk about music without Michael Jackson. If nothing else comes from this trial, people need to know Michael's message of love. Michael was about love, help, saving the world. Michael was an angel on this earth, and it is so hurtful that he is not here.
All right. Well, thank you so much. Again, some of the sentiment outside, a tremendous feeling of anticipation. We're waiting for closing arguments to begin. Vinnie.
Thanks, Jane. Judge Alex, at this moment, the attorneys are preparing for these closing arguments, and the judge will instruct the jury before closing arguments. You know, how much of an advantage is it for prosecutors to get that last word? They have the burden. How much of an advantage is it?
It's a huge advantage because the jury gets to hear from you last, and you get to rebut what the defense has gotten up and stated, and that is critical. In fact, in Florida, it used to be that the defense would get the last word unless they put on a case, and that was changed a few years ago to the prosecution because they have the burden of proof getting the last word. A lot of times, defense attorneys would give up putting on evidence just so they could have the last word because it has such a powerful effect. So it's a big advantage.
All right, the countdown to closing arguments continues here on HLN's special report. We'll take you into the courtroom. You will see and hear everything that the jury sees and hears during closing arguments. Stay tuned, folks.